Good evening and welcome to the Student Housing Information Session. My name is Nolukolo Chwete. I'll be taking you through essential information pertaining to student housing at UCT. With me today, I've got my colleague Dorian Phillips, who will be assisting me to answer the questions that you'll be posting. Please feel free to engage by writing to us and posting in our comments box via our Q&A session. The purpose of today is to give a brief overview of the student housing residence system and what a new applicant can expect in our residences and the experience that they can have. The residence system has about 6,800 bed spaces available to our student population for new and returning students. The system is organized in tiered structures. We've got 3 residence structures. Tier 1, which is essentially for our undergraduate first-time entering students. Our first-year students are essentially accommodated in our first-tier residences, where we have first years and second years. Specifically in junior catering residences, all our students, undergraduate students, we accommodate about 2,200 students in catering accommodation. Our accommodation does not cater for any special dietary requirements, and we can provide up to 4 meals in our dining halls to first-year students. And then second-tier students, we have over 2,000 students staying in our second-tier residences. These are senior students. Third-tier residences, essentially for all self-catering postgraduate students, and we have limited family accommodation. We also accommodate students with special abilities in our residences in the case of accommodation provision, ensuring that the accommodation is accessible and safe. And we engage with our disability services unit, ensuring that we assign the students to the right residence where there is a requirement. Now, what is our eligibility criteria for entry into student accommodation in terms of admissions? Our eligibility for undergraduate students in terms of priorities, there's a group of 4 students that we prioritize. First one are financial aid students. These are recipients of the National Student Funding Scheme, which is administered by the university. And also we have minors. These are applicants who haven't turned 18 by February of admission, in the year of admission. Also, we look at merit. These are students with 540 admission point score system. They are all prioritized for housing. And then there is faculty rules-based criteria. These a group of students are not necessarily prioritized for accommodation. As such, we cannot guarantee they have to meet a certain faculty point scores for consideration for entry into accommodation. Then how is the housing offer made? Essentially, one needed to apply for housing at the time of applying to the university, and then they will meet an admission requirements. If they meet admission requirements into any program of study or program that they've applied for, if there's an academic offer already, then we can start to assess their housing application. As I mentioned earlier, the criteria for admission into housing looks at the prioritized category of students, and then the faculty rules. Like I mentioned, there's no guarantee, but if one meets a specific criteria or a specific faculty point scores, they may be admitted into housing. And if they do meet those 2 conditions, then a housing offer, there'll be an email from the university confirming that an applicant has been awarded a housing place. And then the student housing office, which is where I'm from, will be able now to place the student into a specific residence. We have 16 residences across the university. in terms of undergraduate first-year residences. So our letter will be able to specify the exact allocation of an applicant, and what we require that the applicant confirm acceptance of an offer or decline the offer via our online student housing system. At times, we also make unspecified allocations. This is in an instance where we are not able to confirm the actual allocation at the time, but guarantee that before they arrive, applicants arrive in Cape Town for the admission year, for enrollment, they will know just in advance. And unfortunately, there is a slight delay sometimes in a case where one doesn't meet an offer of admission into housing, but they already have an offer of an academic place at UCT, in which case the applicant should not be concerned, because we do make offers right through the admission cycle. Our cycle starts from April and up until February of the admission year, of the intake year. So at any point, one might still be eligible for a housing place. However, by early November, end of October, if you haven't received an offer and an academic offer was made earlier in the year, and by October, November, we will send you a confirmation either to look for alternative place outside of accommodation, because sometimes we also have students who are performing art and creative arts students in our Faculty of Humanities. They have to firstly perform in order to be assessed for eligibility into housing. It can take some time. So right through the admission cycle, you'll find that an offer of housing follows way later. However, by November, you should have received some type of communication from our office advising whether we are able to assist you or not. Sometimes we are not able to make an offer. There will not be an offer sometimes to some of our applicants by November, in which case we are able to place the student onto our waiting list for consideration should there be any cancellation or there are vacancies in the system, which we usually do have, because some students don't necessarily take up the offer of housing, and we can assist very few students at the beginning of the year. So we have alternative sources of accommodation. Our office is also responsible for providing advisory in terms of alternative accommodation, which is private accommodation that we advertise and we recommend via our website. And we also actually go and accredit these properties. And we also look in terms of location and whether they meet the minimum norms and standards for student accommodation as gazetted by the Department of Higher Education. So we can be able to give you a list of such properties around campus that you can look as alternative accommodation. Our off-campus office also is able to give advice in terms of lease agreements, the location, how far the property is from campus, in terms of transport modes that one could use. We also do engage in terms of rental and deposit information and any advice that one might require in terms of landlords and the deposits that are required, and any other information pertaining to other tenants, or it's a house that you're going to have to share with other students, and how the living conditions can be in private accommodation. Oftentimes, there are also disputes that our office can intervene in or try to resolve, but within our own set of rules. If we are not able to do so, we can always give guidance in terms of tribunals that one could go into. Lastly, we just want to advertise our life at UCT, that it's quite a vibrant residence life that contributes immensely to student development. First year students can expect a whole lot of information during our orientation period, which is a 2 weeks orientation at the beginning of the year upon arrival. We have peer mentors during this time. We also have academic support happening in the residences through our Res Life programs. We have tutors to support the academic well-being of students in all our residences. There's also social and community outreach programs and leadership development programs. We also have opportunities for students to participate in house activities in all our residences. Lastly, we have student facilities. We have the facilities in managing the buildings and the facilities at the residences, such as the dining hall, catering services in our dining hall. We also offer free Wi-Fi services to our students, and our students have got access to a free shuttle service across campus in all our campuses. We also offer computer labs in all our residences, which makes and contributes immensely to the life of students in our residences. I think in a nutshell, that's basically it that we have to offer. Our information is readily available via the DSA website, which is www.dsa.uct.ac.za. And for any queries pertaining to admissions or any Res Life activities or questions you might have, for those who've already been allocated residences, they may already start to liaise with the residence management team already, if they know which residences they've been allocated into. But for more information on all queries, please do send us an email to res@uct.ac, res@uct.ac.za. Thank you so much, and all the best with your applications. We do look forward to having you at our campus next year, and all the best with your studies this year. Thank you so much, and I'll now hand over for our Q&A questions. I'll try my level best to assist where I can. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nolokolo. Okay, so the first question is, what measures has UCT put in place in respect of COVID-19 in the different residences to ensure the safety of our students?
Okay, that's an interesting one that we are still handling even up to this day. As you all know, in March, all our resident students were asked to leave university residences to go home. And then as the university went into different levels of the lockdown, there were certain protocols and certain measures that we had to put in place, because we had students that needed to use lab work, and they needed to come back, mostly our health science students. So we had to rework or re-engineer our facilities to accommodate. That's in terms of their health and safety. We also work closely with our student wellness services in terms of the screening protocols and the health and safety protocols that could be observed. That's in terms of the students that have been returning. And we also had to ensure that the social distancing that's happening in our residences, that's in terms of our dining halls. Our dining halls had to be closed because of the health and safety issues in handling of the food. So we had to look at ways of sourcing meals for students and ensuring that there's proper quarantine that's followed, that as students come in, we have to abide by the World Health Organization standards and measures to ensure that the social distancing, we observe the quarantine period, and then students had strict rules in terms of what they can do in the residences. We had an online screening methods as students came back, so they could log on. We used the IT services to enable that. It's been challenging, but it's been an experience for all of us. Thank you. I think I've covered most of that. Any other question?
Thank you, Nolokolo. With regards to NSFAS, if you are applying for wanting private accommodation, would NSFAS cover your rental? Or is it better to move into on campus?
Okay. NSFAS first priority, or what they recommend, is that students stay in on-campus accommodation. So that's why in our criteria for housing admission, we specifically selected financial aid students to stay on campus. It becomes much better and much more manageable for our students, because we know that all the facilities on campus are much better for financially needy students as opposed to staying in private accommodation. Nevertheless, we do have students opting to stay as, for example, senior, second year and third year students who would opt to go into private accommodation. NSFAS still covers, but there are terms and conditions as to which type of accommodation that they could look at. So it is much more advisable to look at on-campus accommodation. We do make provisions and we do prioritize our financial aid students. Thank you, Dorian. Is there any other question?
Yes, Nolokolo. So international students who need confirmation for their visa applications, by when will they hear from student housing?
By end of November, because in terms of the Visa Regulation and Home Affairs Acts, before intake, before registration, they need to apply for visa for 3 months, within 3 months period. So by November, beginning of November, they should have received some communication from the university that gives them enough time to apply for February intake for registration time. So that's why I mentioned earlier that by end of October, one would have known there will be communication from our office advising whether one is eligible or not. However, I know that if one has been admitted at UC, international students already admitted into a program of study, but do not have on-campus accommodation, the international office does give some assistance in terms of finding for alternative accommodation at times, and also would issue a letter of undertaking pertaining to student accommodation up until there is a confirmed placement. I think I've answered that. Thank you, Dorian. Is there any other question?
Just to elaborate on that, so would you mentioned that students will hear
by end of October?
Allocated, would that apply? Yes, would that apply to all students, not just international students, to everyone that has applied?
That's correct. Everyone that has applied.
Okay, and then who would they contact if they haven't received feedback?
If they haven't received feedback by end of October, they need to write to res@uct.uct.ac.za.
Thank you. Do students have an option with regards to their residences, whether self-catering or catering? Can they decide where they would like to be placed?
Unfortunately, they cannot decide in terms of specific res allocation, but in terms of a preference for a particular accommodation type with regards to catering or self-catering, they can indicate. Their online system did indicate that one could apply either for catering or self-catering. But where they don't have a choice, it's a specific residence allocation. More so because we see that we have transferring students. Transferring students usually would want to go into a self-catering accommodation because they've already been to some institution, to an institution, and probably they are much senior as well. But ordinarily, our first year undergraduates, they are usually between the ages of 18, 19. So we would prioritize them into catering accommodation. Thank you, Dorian.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Does having good marks guarantee a housing offer or being placed in housing?
It does not guarantee. Kept on saying we prioritize, but there's no guarantee. But having good marks, which is, I spoke about an APS score of 540, If one has got an APS score of 540 and they are writing the South African school living examinations, they are prioritized, they will be prioritized for accommodation. But good results, which are below the 540 point score, there is no guarantee, unfortunately. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thanks, Nolokola. I have a question from someone asking, was the housing application a separate application to the academic application?
It's when they applied online, it's one application to the university, but it's got a different section. There's one would need to apply for a program of study. Then there's a section for housing and one needed to select an interest for housing to be considered for housing admission.
Thank you. If COVID continues into next year, will undergrads be allowed on campus? And also I have a question with regards to COVID as well, in terms of the room allocation at the residences. Will students have roommates or will they be in single rooms for next year?
Okay, I know at the moment we are working with the current ruling, which is social distancing, that's in 2020, as students are returning. We are not allocating into any double rooms. For next year, we are planning, should we continue into 2021, we will obviously not allocate into double rooms. However, we are guided by the Department of Higher Education in terms of the protocols to be followed. So if the minister does indicate to us that the social distancing needs to be maintained into 2021, we will look for guidance. But I know UCT is already looking into not allocating into double rooms for 2021. At the moment, we are planning on having a normal academic year next year. Yes, there are talks of having an online semester on online first term next year, but further than that, I don't have any other updates. But in terms of social distancing, we will always maintain social distancing, but guided by the Department of Higher Education and Training in terms of space and social distancing as well. I think I've responded on that one. Any questions, Dorian?
Thank you, Nolokola. And then lastly, how can students or public access this video after the presentation?
We can certainly look into that one, but at the moment, I'm not quite sure. But what we will do, the Q&A questions will be published in our Q&A in our website. So I'll recommend that applicants view our website, which is www.dsa.uct.ac.za. Any further questions can be directed via us at UCT for any specific inquiries. However, the information is available in our website, the criteria of admission, the student housing policy. We also have frequently asked questions. We will certainly incorporate some of the questions that have been raised here today, just to ensure that all the information is available online. Thank you.
Thank you, Nolokola. Just one, I think, very important question, which comes up quite often, is if a student accepts their housing offer and they are allocated to a particular res, will they be able to change it to a different res at a later stage?
No, our policy, unfortunately, we won't be able to change. It will depend on circumstances. Our policy enables random allocation because we can't certainly accommodate each and every person's preference for allocation. It's proven to be difficult over the years. And at the moment, we simply do a random assignment. We place health science students close to the faculty, which is the closest faculty. And then we try to also place students who are doing performing arts close to where they need to be. Other than that, we are not able to do any res changes at all. It will defeat the purpose that we're trying to achieve, which is diversity in our residences and random allocation, which is a fair system of allocating at this point in time. However, we have cases of, like I indicated earlier, disability cases, students with special medical conditions. These will need to be treated differently.
Thank you,
Thank
Nolokolo.
you, Dorian.
Just another question that came through. For students that are upgrading the NSC results, will they be offered residence after receiving the results next year only?
Depending whether they've met the conditions of offer for housing. If they meet the eligibility criteria, if they're financial aid applicants, they'll be prioritized. If the point score system is higher, they'll be prioritized. If they meet a specific faculty admission criteria, they may get a housing, but there's no guarantee. However, like I said, there's always a waiting list. All applicants who don't get an offer of housing are placed onto a general waiting list, and we can at a later stage be able to assist.
Thank you, Nolokolo. I don't have any more questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Dorian. You've really assisted me on this. Then that's the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us, and all the best to you with your applications. Good evening.